Welcome to episode 12 of the Unfortunate Diehards podcast. Hashtag Marion Gaborik, Senator's legend. Anyways, I'm Evan, and we are in a new setup, as you can tell if you're watching on YouTube. And boys, want to say hello.
Welcome to the new club.
The new studio.
The new club. All right, ladies and gentlemen. We will go over our teams as always, but we also have a very special guest later on in the episode. We have Ian Mendes, I would say local celebrity of Ottawa, who we all look up to for different reasons. Like, he's covered my favorite team for many, many years, and I think is incredibly fair and writes great articles, and is always a phenomenal speaker, whether it's on the radio or television. I know, Sufi, you love to write articles, and you've managed our website a lot, so that's probably someone who you love looking at too, and I'm sure you like him as well.
I've grown up with watching him.
There you go.
On Sens TV, and every Saturday night introducing the Sens games and playoff games. So yeah, Ian Mendes is an Ottawa celebrity.
And so, we'll get to him a bit later, but, Should we go over any hockey experiences we've had recently? I personally went to my first Habs game. That wasn't in Ottawa, so I was in the 100s at the Bell Center against Vegas on a Saturday night. I totally get it. I still don't like the Habs, but I was like, if you grew up in Montreal and you went to a game, holy moly ravioli, it's so cool. Brendan Gallagher is going up with 4 defenders back, and they're going nuts. It's ridiculous. They have such false hope for every play. It's amazing. I totally get it.
Better than Ottawa right now.
I heard every game at the Bell Center is like a playoff game.
Not even a playoff game.
Every game at the Bell Center is like a Luke Combs concert in Ottawa.
Oh, it was so good. As you can tell, Sufi and I are definitely not Luke Combs fans by our shirts.
Yeah, we are. Yes. I don't want to speak more on this topic. I love this man. My favorite red ginger man.
Aw.
What? That's not Ed Sheeran?
Or me?
He's like third. Is Luke Combs, Evan.
Oh, I'm 2? I get it.
You're not ginger.
My beard's ginger, though.
Barely.
No, okay. If you see me in the sunlight, maybe we don't go out enough. I don't know.
He doesn't
It's
go out of his
pretty
house.
orange.
Who?
You.
I leave my house.
You won't even hang
the
out
summer.
with us other than podcasts.
That's true.
You're not even in town, bro. What do you mean?
That's also
But
true.
I am now. I said no.
Okay, we're getting into personal stuff here.
Anyways.
No, I didn't say no because I don't want to hang out. I said I'll
don't-
come later because I have to go to build the bed at my sister's.
you're coming
You're
later.
confirming you're coming later.
Yeah, I'll come later.
Let's go.
Oh, there we go. Breaking news. Omer's coming. All right. So, Sufi, you want to go over the injury list for the Capitals?
Is one less. Carlson's back. Orlov's skating. Oshie's skating. Wilson's skating. Backstrom's skating. Everyone for the last week has been skating, but everything I read is out indefinitely. So no progress. Wilson and Oshie should be back in December, I think. Orlov, I think, will be back in the next few games. Will any of that help us? I don't know. We just took 50 shots on St. Louis and let up 24, and we still lost 5-4 in a shootout. So I don't know if there's much that can be done. We have 90, I think it was 96 shots in the last 2 games, and we lost both games. So at this point, I'm just when the guys come back, either we're going to improve or we're going to have COV playing with Bedard next season.
By the way, that was Sufjan talking about the Caps. He's a Caps fan. I'm a Sens fan. And Omar to my right is a Leafs fan.
I did just flash the camera with my Hab shirt that I'm wearing under this, but yes, I am a Caps fan.
He's a bit of a cheater.
Yeah. Sufi has about 8 favorite teams. He's like Paul Bissonnette.
I have 32 favorite teams. I just ranked them in order.
So the Islanders are 32nd.
So Leafs are one of your favorites.
Islanders are my 32nd. Leafs, I think, are probably in the late 20s. Ottawa fluctuates based on fan base. The more I go on Twitter, the less I like Ottawa. That's the
But
problem.
top 10? Top 5?
Probably top 10. But it's because I live here. When I leave Ottawa, I don't know how much adornment I'm going to have.
Sufi has said he's going to leave Ottawa about 37 times since I've been friends with him, so we'll see what happens.
No, we'll see. Well, I wrote my LSAT, so that's my ticket out of here. Regardless, I'm becoming a bigger fan of Anaheim now because
They can't win in regulation.
Yes, but their TikTok is amazing.
Speaking of TikTok, you should check us out on TikTok. Unfortunately,
No,
Diehards.
his person. People clown Zegras so much, and like they clown him even though like he just seems like the nicest guy ever. You know, I want to
Who
be his friend.
clowns him?
Oh, the comments are bad, bro. They're like, oh, they're pushing Zegras on us or whatever. I get the NHL 23 stuff, but I don't actually care who's on the cover of NHL. Like, I don't buy the actual physical game, so it really doesn't matter. It's just whose face you see on the screen. I'd rather see Zegras and Sarah Nurse's face than Austin Matthews' face for a third time, so I'll actually take the Zegras cover. Anyways, I am now they're in my top 5.
That's who you should be in ESHL, like parody Austin Matthews.
Just make your forehead huge and score a ton of goals.
Okay, well, I might go with that.
All right, go to Ottawa now.
No, we'll go Ottawa last. It's okay.
Ugh.
Toronto Mans. You can go ahead.
What's
Toronto
even happening with
Mans.
Toronto, realistically?
Yeah,
No,
what
wait.
is happening?
Oh, I do have one thing about Toronto.
Matt Murray's back.
Matt Murray is back.
Yeah, okay,
Matt
well-
Murray's in the last 2 games. I'll give him the last 2 games haven't been bad actually. He's
Just
been
give
alright.
it time. Either he's going to start sucking or get injured.
Oh yeah, one of them is gonna happen.
Anyways, the question I had, you see Marner try to play defense last night?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
my friend
absolutely.
sent me
Wait,
a
actually?
tweet.
They played him.
No,
for
no.
like-
I
it
mean,
like
he
a
was.
minute.
They didn't play. It was power play, I think.
No. It was like I think they needed a goal or something. I don't know, or maybe it was power play.
I think it was power play.
Regardless, no, it was even strength though.
No, I'm pretty sure it was power play.
I'm pretty sure it was even strength.
Okay, we'll double check that out.
Regardless, Marner was playing defense and he got absolutely turned inside out by Nico
Nut-
Hischier.
Nutmegged.
Oh, it was bad. Like he fell. He was like this afterwards.
He
For
went
anyone
like I
that
think he
can't-
went
that's
left
listening
and
to
then
this, he
through
like,
the
he
legs.
basically just like fell on his face basically.
Yeah, he fell over, is what
Yeah.
Sufi was
He didn't.
reenacting.
He actually didn't fall.
No, he was going. He was about to.
But he didn't fall.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you like
I think
defending?
the
Well,
point
I'm just
here is-
he's picked like
The
yes,
point
it was
here
it was
is-
a great move and
He got walked,
he
but he
got
didn't
walked,
fall.
but he did not
Yeah.
fall on his face. You know that did not happen.
The difference between Eric Carlson and Mitch Marner is that Carlson might get walked on that play, but he won't like almost fall over. He'll just get walked. So
Where did
in
Eric Carlson
theory,
come from?
I'd just like to throw out that the only person with more points than Eric Carlson in the NHL is Connor McDavid.
Yeah, they're both really good forwards.
We'll see. We'll see how long it goes for though.
It'll
how
go on
long?
forever, bro.
How long is this Eric Carlson going to
Sufi,
streak?
Sufi, are
streak
you
gonna last?
on the Hall of Fame bandwagon?
If he gets inducted as a forward, then yes.
Oh come on! This guy is
joking.
talking nonsense.
He'll be in the Bobby Orr category. Lots of points. Make the Hall of Fame.
I can't speak on how good Bobby Orr was defensively. I wasn't alive in the '60s.
I know all
Really?
his analytics.
Sophia thought you were 40, by the way, because of the podcast.
Even
I
if
thought
I
it was
was 40,
believable.
I wouldn't be alive in the '60s.
I
Still,
swear.
it's closer.
It is closer. How does she actually think I was 40?
No, because she had no idea. And then in the episode, we said you were 20.
Oh, one of you guys
One
would
and
joke like I'm 40
42.
or something.
No, I
And
was
she was
young.
like, is he 40? Is he 21?
The thing is, I probably we look the same age
Yeah.
in a sense. I look.
This is like our
potentially
most
older.
all over the place podcast ever.
We're kind of all over the place right now,
Personalities
yeah.
coming out
yeah, we're really going for it today. But yeah, Leafs. So Matthews is finally off the 1-goal train. Still not as many as Shane Pinto, but that's okay.
How many does Pinto have?
8.
Yeah, Matthews has 8 too.
Ovechkin has more than both. I don't know why I had to say that. We need some sort of redeeming thing. Our team sucks.
Yeah.
So
Our team.
Yeah.
Our team's a
So yesterday was the
Canada's
first.
the Washington Capitals.
Yesterday was the first game the Leafs played this season where I legitimately thought that they played against a team that was just better than them. They just weren't
Who would
as
have thunk that it was the New
the
Jersey
New Jersey
Devils?
Devils, man. They're just
Did any of us pick them to make the playoffs?
Bro, most of us, I think it was like 6 or lower. I was the most optimistic about it, and I put them like 6. And
yeah. I don't even know where I put
I
them,
think
but
it's
it was
mostly just
yeah.
'cause they were a young team. I don't even necessarily think we thought they were bad outright.
I never thought that they would be on an
Yeah.
11-game win streak.
It's just every single player that they have is just clicking. Even like their goaltending is now average.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm hoping I'm wrong here with the Leafs in this case, but it seems like 18 games in, this team, while it's still going to be a team that's going to finish in a division spot and make the playoffs, it's still going to, they're going to finish in the top 3 div spot. It's going to
Hot
happen.
take, you said first in the division.
Well, yeah, let's hope that happens.
I almost said first.
Yeah, but you did say first and you backed off. You pretty much said
And
first.
it doesn't even matter. 'Cause it's not like Tampa's going to do it either. So.
True. Actually, it's Boston. We none of us thought Boston would have done it, but with
That was high on Boston.
with Toronto, it's we're seeing a team that's sure they're good. They're gonna make the playoffs. They're gonna be in the top 3 div, but we're not seeing a team that we're seeing the worst of them so far as we've seen in the Matthews era. This is the worst of the team that we've seen. They're not anywhere near as good as last year's regular season team. Yeah. They're not anywhere near as a team that was. I mean, I guess they're a bit closer to that 2020, the COVID team, the before the COVID season, the 2019-20 season when COVID first hit. They were rocky after a while, and that season wasn't great. The one where Babcock got fired. They're kind of closer to that team this year than they are to last year's team.
Yeah, they're just setting the expectations low. Less disappointment in the playoffs.
Yeah, but I mean, you can see when you're watching them that they're just not. The team isn't as good.
It's also Bunting took a significant step back so far this year. Like
Bunting took a step back, yeah.
Yeah, and like now he's basically just a third line grinder
But
playing on that first
yeah,
line still.
bottom 6 isn't like Engvall was a good regular season guy. He hasn't been playing that well.
I don't know if I've ever heard someone say that before.
What?
Engvall's a good regular season
Yeah, he's a
guy.
pretty decent regular season guy, and I mean even last year he played pretty well.
He's
But like
the definition of a third liner.
he's I mean that's what I mean. Like as a third liner, he was like effective down there, to some degree. But like
Right now he's playing with Nylander though. And
no, he's on 9-3. He's playing with
who's with Tavares and Nylander?
Well, it was Robertson for a while, and then Robertson's been benched. I think for a couple of games now. He's been a healthy scratch. So last night I believe it was Kerfoot. Yeah, Kerfoot.
Nice.
Things you love to hear.
Okay, that's my theory on the Leafs though. Is just like they're like one injury away from just like catastrophe. Like someone in their top 6 gets injured, they already have no depth in their forward core. If one player gets injured, it's like dire consequences. Because now their defense injuries are happening. It's not getting better or worse. It was just already like what it was.
Yeah.
But if something happens to that forward core, like in any kind of significant way, then it's going to be hard to recoup those points.
But Jordy Ben, guys, Jordy Ben.
Jordy Ben isn't any worse than what they already had out there. So
yeah, man, he's been good so far. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah,
you're this year's Ilya Lipchushkin.
That's the Leafs for you. Yep, just not as crisp, not as exciting.
Lipchushkin? You just combine 2 players there?
Yeah, it's Lyubushkin.
And then Valerie Nichushkin?
Hey, I'm the one that was high on Lipchushkin from the start.
You're high?
No, my dad watches this.
TV is not high, just to confirm.
He doesn't even know what that means.
On life.
How about your Sens, Evan?
Oh, what a great...
You talk about it, and then I'll bring out the facts.
I think. Do you think it's safe to say that the Sens are just going to tank again this season?
No.
No?
Here's why.
Okay.
The Senators are the only team with a plus goal differential that are not in a playoff spot.
Okay.
I think this was a game or 2 ago, they compared them to the Toronto Maple Leafs, who had played the same amount of games at the time. The Leafs had scored 48 goals and let in 46 goals. Ottawa had scored, I think, 44 goals and let in 42 goals. So same goal differential time. Ottawa was third last in the league, and Toronto was
second in the
division.
Yeah.
That's bonkers to me. And every game they've lost has been by 1 goal if you exclude empty netters. Every single game. 1 goal or 2 goals with including an empty netter, which is stupid. Like, I'm not saying like they didn't deserve to win games. I'm saying like they need to learn how to close out more. Like if they closed out a third of those games that they lost by a goal, you're looking at a significantly better record, because they've lost, 9 games right now. So you add 3 onto that, they're at least 500. Like it's an annoying time, and it, like, we keep getting injuries, and not to like someone who doesn't contribute. For example, it's like Josh Norris was injured or is injured. Shabbat's out with a concussion right now. Zub's been out for a couple of weeks. He's coming back tomorrow, luckily.
Regardless of Shabbat's season has been great though. Regardless,
No, I think they're still overplaying him, in my opinion, and they have just played him so much that, like, in my opinion right now, like, you have Jake Sanderson, who's been playing phenomenal, second in rookie scoring, by the way, as a defenseman. And he's just been, like, overall, like, a very solid defender, or, like, defenseman in general. And so you have, especially when Zub, Shabbat, and Sanderson are all healthy, 3 guys that could give you 23 plus minutes a game. So to run Shabbat, like, they're still running him like 30 minutes a night sometimes, which is, in my opinion, unnecessary. Like, you can pair Zub up with other people. He complements almost anyone just because he's so solid defensively. And Sanderson, just as good of a skater, if not better than Shabbat, just plays the game different. And, like, I think you have 3 guys that you can just use in a bunch of different scenarios, but they're running Shabbat into the ground still, which, sure, I get he's been your guy and you trust him, and you have for the past however many years because he's been, like, one of our only consistent defensemen, but you're at a point now where you can use these other guys, and you should be seeing that, like, you can trust them over the past, like, Zub season, 2 seasons, whatever it was, and Sanderson, like, over even these first 18 games, he's, like, probably Ottawa's best defenseman right now. Yeah. And that's crazy because Shabbat's an 8x8 defenseman, and Zub, you could argue, is like one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL. So saying that Sanderson is, like, if you've watched all the games, evidently been the best defenseman, kind of crazy.
Well,
has he been the best defenseman in Ottawa / Toronto? Probably, actually.
Who, Sanderson?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, easily.
Yeah. Okay, here's the thing. Here's the factuals, and is going to reiterate something I said last week. And instead, but I'm using stats now instead of just asking you a question. Regardless of what you say, this is my opinion. DJ Smith needs to be fired if this team wants to be successful. Every player that has left in the Sens.
Oh, I saw this.
In the past year, their defensive numbers have increased while leaving. The players that have come to Ottawa, all their defensive numbers have decreased. So,
can you name the players you're talking
Nick
about?
Paul, Colin White, and Sanford, all their defense improved. Giroux, DeBrincat significantly went down defensively. Joseph Mott went down defensively, not as much. Derek Brassard, like, is already, I don't know how big his expectations are, but he also significantly went down defensively. On top of that, Ottawa offensively is actually one of the best teams in the league. Second in goals for per 60, expected goals for per 60, and sixth in just goals per 60. So they're already top 6 in actual goals, and they're expected to be better. 34st in expected goals against.
They're so bad, they're 34th.
Yes. 31st in expected goals against. I'm guessing the only team lower is, like, Arizona or something. And 20th in goals against per 60. So they should technically be worse defensively than they actually are. For me, considering that, like, players have gone other places and improved in their systems, in their new systems defensively, while also not really seeing that much of a drop-off in their other numbers. Like, I think Nick Paul has actually thrived even more so offensively in Tampa, and he's not playing on any of the
You probably know
top
how good
lines.
Nick Paul is.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we saw he definitely surprised me a lot playing on Tampa. And, like, I saw flashes then in Ottawa, but it was definitely the most consistent I've ever seen him, like, all throughout. So for me, when you see this kind of stuff, like accumulate over a long period of time, and your team is being carried entirely by offense, where you know it's not the coaching doing it, it's the personnel, because last year they didn't have as much of the personnel and it wasn't as good of an offense, and now you add DeBrincat, Giroux, and they're playing amazing, and now the offense has improved. It's very clear that it's that, not the coaching, whereas the defense has basically been the same for the last 2 years, or the players that have left have been worse wherever they went after that. So for me, it's just, if you want this team to take any kind of step forward, DJ Smith has to go. I don't care what kind of affiliation he has to Dorian or his family or whatever. Like, the development stage is done. You had your internal competition probably for a little longer than it need to be, and now you need a coach that's actually going to help you get into the playoffs first of all, and then thrive in the playoffs. Who that is, I don't know. I don't care. It just isn't DJ Smith.
Yeah, but then again, you had last week Dorian with that pretty firm statement, like coaching is not the issue. It's as simple as that. He said or something like that.
He is like Evan did say though. That's like, you're not gonna throw your coach under the bus. But
You're not gonna. Yeah.
You are right though that Dorian like probably took it a little further than I think most Sens fans hope for.
You don't. He came out with like pretty emphatically, right? Like he didn't just say no, it's fine, our coach is okay.
Yeah.
He's like, no, coaching's not the issue, and it's as simple as that. Like that's just the facts or whatever.
Yeah, bro, it's the same thing in Washington right now. The one game, the 2 games that Laviolette was out with COVID, we played the best games of our season. He comes back, we're 0-3. Fire Lavi.
I think there's something else that I saw on Twitter. It was like from Frank Saravalli or something, and they were talking about there was a move that Ottawa had in the works, and it didn't go through because a player rejected it who had a no move clause or something like that. So I don't know who it was or whatever, but I do genuinely think that if Ottawa had a 4th defenseman, it would change a lot, in my opinion, because I would say the drop-off from 3 to 4 on defense is huge. Like, I would say Ottawa has a solid top 3, but then after that, I'd say every other defenseman's probably a 6th or a 7th, which is tough, because, like, even if you have, like, a number 1 defenseman and then, like, a couple 4s or 5s, that's good. But, like they're not bad all the time. But, like, Brandstrom, Holden, Zaitsev, Hamonic, it's, like, Jacob Bernard, excuse me, Bernard Docker's been all right. And, like, maybe Lassie Thompson comes up and plays well, too. But, like, those ones who have played, like, they're not top 4s on almost any NHL team, maybe Arizona or something. But I just think if they had any of those guys on like a bottom pair and a consistent bottom pair, because they do just change the pairings up all the time, which is like Mark Mathot talked about this, like consistency in a pairing is so much better because like you just know what to do on every single play. But if you're throwing out there with people you don't play with, then it's harder to make the reads that you're typically used to. And so if you're playing Shabbat with everyone or Sanderson with everyone, like you're just making it more difficult. If you had pairings that you played consistently with, then I think team success would also slowly go up with that.
I don't disagree with that. The only thing is though that this is team defense as a whole, right? Like if you look at Toronto's team,
You also lost probably your best defensive center.
Okay, but I'm talking like if you look at Toronto's team, top to bottom, compared to Ottawa's team on paper, like you may have the Matthews-Marner thing where they're like a little like decently far ahead of everyone else. It's not that much different to me. And Ottawa's depth, honestly, in the forward core on paper is not different. Like I would potentially take Ottawa's bottom 6 over Toronto's bottom 6. Regardless, the reason that Toronto's team is still successful in the regular season, at least, and we all clown their defense, we all clown their defensive players, but realistically, their team defense has been in the top 10 for the last 2 years. And I think that even if you added a defenseman to Toronto, like, then it would improve their team a lot because they already have the team defense in place. If you added another defenseman to Ottawa, I think it would, like, maybe give them more consistency in the decor and everything, yes, but if the coaching is still the same and everything is still the same, like I don't see that having that much of an effect on Ottawa unless it's like a player that really changes a lot. Like if it's like a top 2 defenseman.
Well, you could also like bring up the point of like Toronto has guys like I think Matthews and Marner are older than all of Ottawa's top 6 except Giroux. Tavares is older. Nylander's older. Pretty much everyone in their top 6 is older and more experienced, and that's like a known thing that young forwards often struggle face-offs defensively. Like you don't see a player come in and just maybe not score a ton, but just are lights out defensively. Like that's a very unheard of thing to have happen. So I'm not saying this is like it'll obviously change, blah blah blah, but like it's also not surprising to me because Toronto just does have a more experienced forward core in general, where Ottawa, other than Giroux, even in your top 9, like Joseph is young, Pinto's really young, Mott's in his 20s, but I think he's a bit older. But like still, you have, other than Giroux and Watson, I think every single person is 24 or younger.
Yeah, it's a really...
It doesn't make the difference between like 31st in the league to what Toronto's in the top 10. I'm talking like, I think coaching could at least get them to like being a mid-tier team defensively with the team that they have right now. I don't think that they need a drastic change where it brings them into the top 10 in defense, because like realistically at this point, if they're in the top 5 in offense, they don't really need that as much anyway, and their goaltending is, in my opinion, a little bit better than Toronto's when they're healthy. So I get the experience thing, but the thing is, like, I don't think that if you have these same group of players with the same coach in the next 2 years that they'll improve defensively to the point where they'll be in the top 15 if DJ Smith is still their coach. I think that if you had a different coach in there now with a different defensive system that wasn't straight up just a development coach, I think you would already have a top 15 defensive team. Because realistically, DeBrincat was not a bad defensive player until he came to Ottawa, and now he's a significantly worse defensive player. Giroux wasn't a bad defensive player at all until he came to Ottawa, and and then I get the Norris thing as well. It's just you also have like the guys like Kachuk and Batherson. It's not like they ignore defense or they like don't have the effort level or whatever. I think they have potential to be better defensive players, but no one has tried to bring that out of them yet. And I don't think any of their offenses will be hurt as bad because they're all such talented offensive players that if they just improve defensively through coaching, that I think that they could already be in the top 15 in terms of defensive players or defensive teams. For me, the decor question, like obviously if Ottawa had another defenseman, it might have helped their team not be as bad defensively, like, or if they even like took out some of the plugs where you had Zaitsev playing for a while or Hamonic playing too much or whatever. But realistically, like Toronto has pretty much the exact same situation where you have Riley, and then I don't even know after that, honestly, like
Brody, and then
Riley Brody, and then like the other defensemen are
either really young or
but they're old. But again, those are.
We do have a similar defense core.
5
I like
years.
my top 3 more than your top 3, but
I don't even know who I'd put as 3 for Toronto. Muzzin, but he's always
so
injured.
Ottawa's top 3 is better.
Yeah, bro.
For defensively? Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah, but
Ottawa's just better.
Yet still somehow.
Ottawa. Well, when the Leafs were in the Sens position, they made the playoffs.
But that's what I'm saying. Yet somehow, Toronto's team defense is significantly better than Ottawa's, with a worse decor on paper and a similar-ish offense.
Yeah.
Toronto's team defense is much better.
And
your
probably
team,
with
your
worse
team right
goaltending,
now,
too.
your team right now is the Leafs team from. Well, it's not really, because the records are quite different. But your team right now is the Matthews and Marner's first season, like 2016 Maple Leafs, their first year into the league. Like that was the youngest team probably. They didn't have anyone. Who was the oldest at that time? Like Bozak was still on the team,
probably.
and
Kadri.
I think and Kadri was there.
But he's still like 20s.
Yeah.
Not even late 20s, mid 20s.
Exactly, yeah, in 2016, and JVR was there still for 1 year, yeah.
Yeah, the classic. We had the mix of classic Leafs and new
Yeah,
Leafs.
that was and then we had Riley back there, and Zaitsev was there. Other D.
Riley really hasn't improved defensively in like 5 years.
But see, so that wasn't. I guess that's what our team were. Our teams are pretty similar in that sense. From at that time, like even right now, I guess they're kind of similar, like you said. But even if you take the 2016 Leafs in Matthews' first year, we were as young as like DeBrincat and Norris and Pinto, and that was pretty much the same top 6 build-up.
Is DeBrincat not 24?
He is 24.
Okay.
24, yeah.
Matthews.
Matthews right now is
25?
24, 25.
He's born in 97.
So
25.
25.
Marner is what, 26, 25? We're not talking that much of a difference here.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah. Not at all, actually.
But also Ottawa has
And then you have Tkachuk.
more.
So DeBrincat is not even as
Young
young as
players.
Matthews and Marner
No,
were back.
DeBrincat-
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Digressed defensively coming
Yeah.
out of Ottawa. While his offense is honestly probably improved, or at least, has a
He
little
should
bit
have.
stronger defense.
If he had 10
Yeah.
goals right now, he's probably. I wonder, like, because I looked at this like weeks ago. I brought this up. He was like top. He was the second most unlucky player in the NHL. He probably still is like top 3 or something. I wonder how many projected goals he should have right now. Like if it was like 12, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right.
It's probably around 10 or 12, but that's the thing. I don't think anyone's really worried about his offensive side that much. Or I don't think anyone's worried about Ottawa's offense in general.
Yeah.
To be honest, even with Brassard, it's not like it dropped off
But
much.
but like that's my point, right? Like if you take the similarities of the teams, especially the Leafs of that year, 2016, to what the Sens are this year, that's where I think coaching makes a huge difference. Because regardless of what people say about Mike Babcock, like the one thing he was a good coach in terms of his systems and the way he taught the game, right? Like he was a good coach, and that team made the playoffs.
He was a horrible development coach.
Yeah. Horrible, but I mean, in terms of his systems and stuff, like in terms of getting wins out of a team, like the guy's good. The guy's good, right? So they made the playoffs that year.
You got to look at the arc of all the teams that were high-flying, successfully offensive teams when they were in the early stages. The only difference between them and Ottawa really is they had more wins, but I think the NHL was a little more offensive at that time. Regardless, those teams became more defensive and started winning cups. Or became more defense as in like they just had better team defense while still being able to produce a ton of offense. The only team that really won with their before their transition was Pittsburgh, and that was because they still had like a lot of the old players, and then they just added Crosby Malkin. But even they, like in their 2016-17 runs, their team defense was amazing. And then you see Washington's turnaround. That was also the same thing. You see Tampa Bay when they were losing in early playoff rounds, they had the same turnaround, even though they basically had the same personnel for a few years, and then they just something happened in their coaching. John Cooper says that he changed something in their philosophy. It's not like he was just doing the same thing every time. Same thing happened with Colorado. They started losing in the second round. They had a coaching change, more defensive, became
Added
the
Gil
team.
McCarr.
There you go.
I don't think we see a Sens coaching change this year, though.
And then it was another defensive team, the Blues, when they won too. They had a ton of offensive talent. They added a goalie in like January, and they became stronger defensively. And then they won the cup after having one of the most historic turnarounds ever. We're not going to see that from Ottawa this year because they're not going to fire their coach. That's my thing. I don't think that all this expected stuff, like, it's just you're hoping that the stuff changes, but it's very possible that like the expected stuff doesn't change the whole season. That's happened to teams many a times, especially when they're bad defensively, because offense is hard to come by like consistently. So you can have spurts of offense, and some teams get saved by their defense, whereas Ottawa won't. So that's the point I'm trying to make, is once they change their coaching, then you can survive on whatever offense you still have, plus a defensive system, and you'll make the playoffs easy.
Hey, is Zaitsev still playing every game?
He's in Belleville.
He's in Belleville? Oh, look who caught
There's
a
the
hit.
one change.
Well, we were talking about comparing older teams to newer teams. I think this is a great time to send it over to someone who has covered the same team for a very long time. This episode we have Ian Mendes, TSN, The Athletic, Carleton University. This man does it all. He has a man of a million jobs and also assistant coach for his daughter's ringette team. So we would love to thank him for giving us some time and enjoy the interview with Ian Mendes. Please welcome to the Unfortunate Diehards podcast, the man who has seemed to have mastered all these different jobs in journalism, has, he's a professor, works for TSN, The Athletic, and assistant coach for a ringette team, I believe, as well. So thank you for joining our podcast, Ian Mendes.
Hey, thanks guys for having me. As what do they say? It's jack of all trades, master of none. Maybe that's what is the right description for it. But listen, I just to let your listeners know, have been wanting to come on this podcast for a while. You guys have been so patient with me. Just trying to find a date and time that works. So I'm pretty excited to be able to do this and chat whatever it is, whatever hockey related stuff, Senators, non-Senators. It's all good.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to ask you the first question. So, something I had been thinking about, which is kind of like more recent in Senators land, is that the Senators have obviously haven't had very consistent defense over the past couple of years. Just using, I think it was one of the top 5 teams with the most used defensemen throughout those couple seasons. But watching them this season, Shabbat's been maybe a little more inconsistent, and Sanderson has looked phenomenal. So my question to you would be, do you think that Jake Sanderson is currently better than Thomas Chabot already?
You know what? It's a good question. And I think what's happened with what I think, Evan, what's happened with Thomas Chabot is I think there's a little bit of fatigue with him in the market, like in that we've watched him for so long and we've come to appreciate what he's done that when he kind of falls a little bit short of that bar, we're like, oh my God, this guy's terrible. And he's not. If you look at his underlying numbers, even this year, the expected goals, all that stuff, it's all pretty good. Like the shot metrics, all of it's pretty good. It just seems that, he's given the puck away a little bit more than he has. And then here comes Jake Sanderson, who's like the shiny new toy. And we're like, we've never seen this guy before. And he looks awesome. And so, look, if I had to win a game right now, if they were both 100% healthy with a minute to go in the game, I mean, I'd probably go Chabot, but I think Sanderson has put himself into the equation that, hey, I think I can get myself into those minutes. And, we've seen him now in the absence of Chabot. He's played, 24, 25 minutes. He's looked really comfortable. He looks good. I don't want to put the expectations on him yet that he is, definitively the number one center, or defenseman. Has he played better than Chabot at times this year? Yes, but let's also remember Thomas Chabot has played too much this year. And I think he plays against the other team's top players during 5-on-5 and all that stuff. So, what I'd like to see ideally in all of this is when all 6 guys are healthy, let's get Thomas Chabot's minutes down to 24, 25. Let's get Sanderson's minutes up to 22, 23 and kind of go from there. But, it's at least we're having the conversation that somebody's pushing Thomas Chabot at the top, because I think for the last 3 years, it's been Chabot and then everybody else. And it certainly feels like Sanderson's closed the gap there.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So I'll keep a Senators related question here. This episode, like we filmed a little bit earlier on this, and I went pretty hard at DJ Smith. And I guess my question for you is, do you think he is on the hot seat, or do you think there should be a coaching change in Ottawa, just based off certain things that I've seen where it seems that Ottawa has a really good offense and a really, like, the defensive numbers aren't great at all. And maybe that's attributed to the defense core that they have, but it seems that every player that comes to Ottawa, their defensive metrics go in the negative direction, whereas players that leave Ottawa, like such as Nick Paul, their defensive metrics go in a positive direction. So do you think that coaching would be a change that Ottawa needs to make make the next step, whether it's this year or next year?
Yeah, it's a valid point. And I think if you're asking me if the seat is hot, yeah, and DJ would tell you it's hot, and it should be hot. Like, I don't think you can start a season winning 6 of your first 17 games after you vowed to be better, mm-hmm. and not expect that there's going to be some level of accountability or consequences or repercussions or whatever you want to say. Like, I think this 4-game road trip is going to tell the story for Ottawa. I think they're going out west there, San Jose, Vegas, Anaheim, LA. When they come back from that trip, I think we're going to know exactly what this team is. We're going to have passed that mythical U.S. Thanksgiving mark. We'll have passed the 20-game mark. We'll have passed some of these natural checkpoints in the schedule. And I think we can make an assessment on them. And I do think that if they come home, and right now they're 6-10-1 as we're recording this podcast, they're 6-10-1. I mean, if they come home and they're, you know, they win only one of these 4 games, then I think nothing is off the table. The one thing I will say, though, and I thought this was really interesting, earlier this month, and I think this was after about 12 games, it was 10 games or 12 games, but Pierre Dorion sought us out in the media. We were at Canadian Tire Center. We hadn't put in a request in a couple of weeks to speak to the GM. And to be honest, I think a lot of us were like, hey, maybe today's the day to speak to Pierre. Their communications staff came down to us and said, hey, Pierre's going to give you guys an update on Josh Norris, and feel free to ask any question you want. And so we were like, oh, okay, well, they're off to kind of a slower start than they like. We asked Pierre Dorion straight up, and he backed the head coach. And I guess this is my point. To me, if at that point DJ Smith was truly on the hot seat, Pierre Dorion wouldn't have sought us out and given that whole Pierre Dorion's a loyal guy and Pierre Dorion believes in DJ Smith. You don't do that. If you think your coach is on the super hot seat, you just lay low. You don't seek out the media. So I don't think earlier this month he was on the hot seat, but I think the temperature with each loss gets turned up. Now, does it get turned up on the GM to go out and trade for defenseman? Does it get turned up on the head coach to do something, or his job in jeopardy? I don't know. But it felt like being at the game on Saturday, the temperature got turned up on the fan base. And to me, that's what we as reporters and what the organization really need to pay attention to. Pay attention to your customers. And Saturday was a game in which you had 18,000 people at the game. And some of them, not all of them, but some of them voiced their displeasure with the direction of the team. I don't recall a time this season in which they were booed off the ice. So I think when you start getting booed off the ice and things like that, I do think it becomes a pressure point for the people in power. And I think absolutely this 4-game road trip, I think, is going to tell a significant story for this hockey team.
Yeah, for sure. I actually had one question for you as well. So you've covered a lot of Sens teams, over your years, the best of the teams, and right now some of the more rebuilding teams.
It's okay. You can call me old. Omar.
No.
You've covered this team for a long time. That's all right.
We'll say experienced. But what I wanted to ask you is, over the years that you've covered the team, how have you managed, with players, with coaching staff, with hockey operations, like team management, people like Pierre Dorion, GMs, how have you managed to, keep that balance between asking the tough questions to the players and to the staff, and still maintaining a good relationship with everyone, whether it be the players or the staff as well?
You know what? It's such a good question because it's a hard thing to do. And especially in a really passionate, intelligent hockey market like Ottawa, where the fans are absolutely consuming your content. They're paying attention to who's asking questions in press conference, how those questions are being phrased, who's asking them, all these things. Like, this is such a good hockey market. And look, I'll be honest with you, it's tough to do. It's tough to do. But I try and go into this and say, like, what's the relationship that matters the most to me? And for me, that relationship is between me and the audience, or me and the Senators fans. So in this case, yes, I work at the Athletic. So that's kind of, where I think about my readers. But when I worked at TSN 1200, I would always think about the listeners. Or when I worked at Sportsnet, it was the viewers. And I think that's the relationship that matters the most to me. I don't ever want to lose. Like, if you're asking me where I put all my energy, it's maintaining that relationship. So I always feel like if I can maintain that level of connection with the fan base and ask the questions that they want to ask, then in turn, listen, if I alienate some management or coaches or players with my line of questioning, I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it because it needs to be asked. I don't look, I'd rather be covering a team that's sitting in the top 5 in the standings. We all would. But it's a hard thing to do. And look, I'll give you a great example. The other night, Brady Tkachuk, I thought he was just terrific in his press conference after the game. He's there. You could tell he's agitated. And I asked him a question about DJ Smith. I thought he was going to, you could see his face. He was staring a hole through my eyes. And you could see his eyes narrowed. And he was like, what are you about to ask me? Because I said something along the lines of, listen, a lot of people are on your head coach. And you could see his eyes narrowed. And I thought he gave just a really good answer. And one of the things that I think players will appreciate is if you ask a tough question, try and not ask it in a really negative manner. So another example from the Saturday game against New Jersey. Ottawa gives up a shorthanded goal. I don't know, there's like a minute left, 40 seconds, whatever it was in the second period. Like just a totally deflating goal. They had all the momentum back. They give up a goal. Now, a lot of fans were angry with Tim Stützle on that play. Felt like he didn't, have enough tenacity either to keep the puck in or back check. So now Stützle, we asked for Stützle to come out and speak post game, and a couple of questions are asked, and I'm like, okay, well, nobody's asked about the play. I got to ask about the play. Now, as a reporter, you can say, people are blaming you for what happened. What do you think about that? And if you ask it in that manner, you're going to put the athlete or the coach or whoever you're at, you can put them on the defensive, right? So with that situation, I just said to Tim Stützle, I tried to do it as professionally as possible. Could you walk us through that sequence from your perspective? What happened that led to the New Jersey goal? Okay, so now you're getting an answer on it, but you're not being an absolute class A jerk. Because the one thing I've learned in over the years is when you ask a mean question in a negative way, you're going to get a mean and negative response. And you know what? Sometimes that's great for clickbait, right? Sometimes that's great for the people that want that 5-second angry clip, but it doesn't really provide a lot of context. And so I wanted to hear from Tim Stützle, like, take me through that play. And he did. And then I asked the follow-up question. And same with DJ Smith. Like, he's in there and coaches and players run hot after games. I had to ask him about, he put 5 forwards on the ice for a power play and it ended up in the back of their net. As a reporter, how do you ask that question? How do you question the coach's tactics without making it seem like you're, questioning him as a coach or so? Again, you have to tread cautiously, try and ask the question. I think for the most part, the players, I think, and DJ respect that I have to ask tough questions. I think so. And if they don't, I always tell them, just pull me aside. Tell me that you didn't like something I read or wrote or said or asked. Like, that stuff's important to me. I want to be, if I'm going to demand accountability out of these guys, I need to be accountable to them. I need them to be able to come to me and say, hey man, like, I didn't agree with what you wrote. And today I wrote a rather, maybe it's scathing. I don't know. I don't think it was. I said, look, everyone needs to take some blame, but if you don't like it, come and see me and I'll explain my point of view of why I wrote that. And I think if you keep an open line of communication with the athlete and the coaches and the executives, it's okay. It's when you start to think that you're smarter than the coaches and the players, that's where you lose them. And I'm not. I'm here to learn as much as everybody else. And I think if you keep that mindset into the questions, hopefully it can lead to a positive thing. And one thing, man, I'm really rambling here. I'm really rambling.
Oh, really?
But one thing I always tell younger reporters or people in the business, I said, your goal should be with athletes and coaches, you want to build relationships, not friendships. And it's really important. It's an important distinction. Build relationships, not friendships. I don't want to go for a beer with, Brady Tkachuk. I'd like, if I ever did, I'd like to have it on a professional level. Like, I don't want to be friends with these guys because I think the minute you become friends with somebody, it clouds your judgment, right? Like, if you had a really good friend who was growing up, ended up playing in the NHL, and you're a beat writer, you're probably going to go differently on that person than you would, if you were at an arm's length. So I think it's really important to always keep that in mind, that your job is not to build friendships with these people. It's to build relationships. And hopefully it's a professional one with, 2 ways of a two-way respect.
Yeah, I think we've generally seen positive relationships with players and reporters in Ottawa. It's just, it can't be said the same around the NHL. Like, if you see the relationship between Leon Draisaitl and the reporters in Edmonton,
Yeah,
it is definitely not the same thing. And they don't have any relationship. They're not friends. They're not anything. They do not like each other. So it's nice to see that the Ottawa players and reporters have like at least a rapport with each other where it's respectful, but the hard questions are asked and people answer them like civilly.
Well, listen, look at Toronto at times with Steve Simmons versus Wade Simmons or Wayne Simmons or Austin Matthews and some of the stuff that's gone on there. And it's hard, and I think the Draisaitl one was really interesting with Jim Matheson because I thought I know that all went viral, but part of that was like we were just kind of coming out of Zoom, and I know that one was an in-person availability, but I think that's what's been lost here is the ability to just sit down and chat with players not on camera. Like the problem I had with Zoom was every one of our questions is recorded and transmitted to the public. And I never liked that. Sometimes I like to sit down with a player when he comes to a scrum, just say, hey man, like I just before we start rolling here, I'm going to ask you about this play. And I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I just, and it helps the athlete understand like where you're coming from. But in Zoom, it's like, all right, you're up. Next question. And then everybody kind of has to hear it. And it's just, it was awkward. And I think that contributed to some of the, awkwardness we've seen. Think about Jacob Voracek had a thing with that Philly reporter. I don't know if you saw this last year where they just, I think Jake called him a weasel or something like that. And, it's those are great examples of mistrust. And your goal, I think, is to build up trust with athletes.
Yeah, exactly. Evan?
Absolutely. I think we'll kind of go from like Senators topic onto other things. But my last Senators question would be, so with this group that they've kind of grown over the years, and I think DJ Smith has done a phenomenal job as a development coach. So creating internal competition, and I'm sure Pierre's kind of played into that, getting maybe like older fourth line guys, whether that's Tyler Ennis or something, to compete with younger players for same positions. So my opinion for you, where we have a top six, where I think should be able to score at least 2 goals for you every single game. Where do you see this current core more or less peaking before it all comes to an end?
Ooh, it's tricky, right? Because Windows, ask Toronto fans about windows to win. Sometimes Toronto's window, I think, really started in 2018. Like they had the 1 year where they made the playoffs in 2017, felt like they were playing with house money, but then the expectations started 2018. For me, the Ottawa group, the expectations won't start until after they've had one trip to the playoffs. I always think that. I always think you get one free spot on the bingo card. Make the playoffs. It's a lot of fun. And then after that, things ramp up. It feels like that year is not going to be this year. And I always keep out, I guess, reason to be optimistic. We're only, 17 games into the season. I'm not saying they're done, but I would put their playoff chances somewhere between 5 and, 12 or 15%. It's not great. They require a significant turnaround here. So it doesn't feel like this is the year, but it kind of feels like, wait a minute. Is Thomas Chabot 20? He's 26, right? Or he's about to be whatever he is. Like you're starting to think like, okay, well, wait a minute. He was drafted in 2015. Like now you're getting a little bit far out from, that's his peak is almost in his rearview mirror. If you think about it, like most players, their best years are between 22 and 26. Statistically, you start to think, okay, well, Brady just turned 23, so he's kind of entering his prime. Timmy's a little bit younger, but Sanderson's a bit younger. But you're like, I kind of feel like the peak of this team should be 2 years from now, like where they're actually competing for a Stanley Cup. But to do that, I don't think you can go. New Jersey's a bit of an aberration because it kind of feels like they're trending towards going from completely out to being a cup contender. You very rarely, you almost need that 1 year in between. I think Ottawa needs that for next year, but I thought that's what kind of this year was going to be, like kind of push for a playoff spot. I'm hopeful it is, but I would say that their window really is to win is when you want to be like, you want Brady Tkachuk to potentially hoist the Stanley Cup before his 28th birthday, because, that to me, that's his peak, right? He's 23, the next 4 to 5 years. Like this is it. This is your window. And, we're entering that stage. Like I said, Thomas Chabot is going to be 8 years past his draft next summer. Like that's a long time. Like we can't call him young anymore. And so it's look, it's go time here. Everyone knows it's go time. You don't trade for Claude Giroux and Alex DeBrincat and act like it's still a rebuild. No, they put some of their chips in the middle of the table, expecting to be better this year. And I think that's what's a little disappointing to see them where they're at right now.
Yeah, I think like there was like I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. My prediction was they just miss, but like I thought even off the like hop, like I know we always struggle the last couple of years in October and November, but that's when Draisaitl and McDavid were lighting us up for like 10 points a night in the All Canadian division. So it was like almost even more deflating this year. Like I was at the game and I was looking at your tweets in the intermissions this past Saturday, and it was like, oh my gosh, like we finally got the momentum back in the game against one of the top teams in the league with a big hit, a big save, a goal, and then it was like we just can't seem to close out a game, let alone a period almost.
Yeah, and you were in the building, right, on Saturday? Like
Yeah.
it was it was so disheartening because it felt like the crowd was there to have a good time and the home team didn't do anything for them for like 37 minutes. Then all of a sudden they like inexplicably came to life for this little window of time and then it just was taken away. And it's very frustrating. And I guess I want people to understand that aren't in Ottawa, don't understand what it's like being a Senators fan. Senators fans didn't enter this year cocky. They didn't enter, even though people are like, "Oh, you guys thought you're going to make the play." Like I think most Ottawa fans thought, just get us to around 90 points. We can flirt with a playoff spot, great, but we just want to see a step forward. That's what's disconcerting. I think at no point did you think you would be waking up the third week of November to open your app or wherever you see the standings and see them in 30th. This wasn't the plan. Like this wasn't it. And so I'm very mindful of that. Like you've been through this. This would be the 6th consecutive year you've been through this. At some point, you just want to see your team win some games.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this off the Sens, and I'm gonna go into a territory where I was told not to go to by some people.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah. So essentially, just a little backstory. Growing up, I played hockey throughout my entire life, and I still do. And in that time, I did experience some racism, and it was something I never really thought about. It's kind of just like, oh, it just is what it is, kind of thing. And I think we're seeing now there's a lot of things coming up with hockey culture, and I know you've written a lot about it. So I guess my question is, do you think that there's an inherent problem with hockey culture, and is this something that is being worked hard enough at being changed? And do you think that progress is actually being made, or if it's kind of just stunted a little bit right now? And that's with regards to any sort of topic that has to do with hockey culture in a negative sense.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you brought it up. It's these are important conversations to have, and you know, it's been something that I think has been top of the radar really since what's interesting is I think if you go back, we really thought that this whole situation with hockey culture had reached a boiling point, and I want to say it was in 2019. That's when Bill Peters, was removed from his job because they found out he used the N word, and there was a bunch of stuff floating around, and people were like, "Oh, hockey's finally having its day of reckoning. Like it's finally gonna be." And now here we are 3 years later, and you're like, "Wait a minute, the Bruins just signed Mitchell Miller without really checking with anybody." There's more stories that come out. The Hockey Canada stuff remains there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there is a culture problem. Now I think what happens is you always hear people saying, well, 95% of the people are good in hockey. And that might be true. And I don't know what the number is. There's no scientific number that can tell you there's 90% of people are good or 99 or whatever the number is. All I know is it's not 100%. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not striving for perfection here. We're never going to get, I think we all need to understand, we're never going to get to a point, whether it's in hockey or other elements of society, where we cross some sort of like mythical finish line and we high five each other. Like, we did it. We defeated racism. Way to go, everyone. It's not happening. Okay. But we need to get as darn close to that finish line as possible. And the last 18 months or 2 years or whatever it is in hockey has taught us that we have some ways to go. And there are inherent problems in the sport. And I think, people like myself, I'm lucky. I think as I go back and I look at breaking into this industry in the early 2000s, I was lucky that, people like Daniel Alfredson, Jacques Martin, Jason Spezza, Wade Redden, that whole group, they really treated me with a lot of respect. And I what's funny is I think I always took it for granted. I never thought twice about it. Now I look back in hindsight and I'm like, man, that group really did a lot for me in terms of just treating me with respect and never making me feel like, hey, you look different than everybody else or anything like that. And, they deserve a lot of credit. And I think I've come around to the fact to realize, okay, well, I'm lucky I didn't have some of those negative experiences. And now it's time for me to look at, the people that look like me or look different than the average hockey player, and understand that they didn't have the same experience as me. And it's really important uh, to look at the game with empathetic eyes and understand that this game has destroyed some people's lives and has just taken away their love for it. And we need to do our best to kind of, I guess, reestablish the values of this game. I think what really is bothersome is, and whether it's the Chicago Blackhawks story or Hockey Canada or any of this Mitchell Miller stuff, so much of this sport, like the idea of like character matters, right? And like this idea that that somehow like those characteristics matter on the ice, and yet it's like they suspend all of those characteristics when it comes to things like misogyny and homophobia and racism and all the things that we're trying to be better at. And we need to do a better job in the media and of trying to educate people about this without speaking down to them. I think that's part of it for me, is understanding, try to use my platform, try not to speak down to people that may not quite understand why uh, language matters. Try to make them understand that, if you're a young girl watching this game, why you may not feel as connected to the sport as other people. And so there is a problem, and I'm glad you brought it up. And I think we need to do a better job of shining a light on it. And I think we can do two things at once. I think sometimes, I'm a big fan of Rick Westhead, and I'm a big fan of Katie Strang, and I make the mistake of sometimes reading the replies to their stories, of reading the either Twitter or on their platforms, people responding to the story, and people will say to like Rick Westhead and Katie, they'll say things like, "Why do you hate this game so much? Why do you try and tear it down?" And people need to know that they love this sport. That's why they're doing it. Katie loves the NHL. Rick loves the NHL. That's why he's doing it. He's trying to create a better sport. If you want to find positive stories about your favorite players in the NHL, don't tell me that you can't find those stories. They're everywhere. What you can't find are the stories about the seedy underbelly of the sport. And if you don't have journalists with flashlights like Katie and Rick Westhead shining a light in those places, we're not doing our job. So it's it's a really difficult story to tackle. I feel like we're better off today because of Rick Westhead, because of Katie Strang and reporters like that. We're better off. We have a ways to go, but I think we're better off today than we were 5 years ago. And I'd love if 5 years from now we have the same conversation. I can tell you, yeah, we're a little bit closer. But I'm never expecting us to get to some point where we've eradicated all the problems in sport, because that's just impossible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I'll just add, one more question for you, and then we can let you go. Out of all of the different aspects of your job, when you were starting out, what part seemed the most intimidating to you, and how far do you think you've come along in that specific aspect?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say, the biggest transition for me, like there's a couple of transitions. Okay. First thing, like I grew up a diehard, all three of you are going to hate this. I grew up a diehard Montreal Canadiens fan. Okay. And I mean, diehard.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I like Montreal. So.
Evan has thrown his camera down. Like I was honestly like, that was my team as a kid. Like Patrick Waugh was my guy. The '93 Stanley Cup was like, I was in high school. It was the best time. Like I just love that team. Okay. Then in about the year 2000, I graduated from Carleton's journalism program. I actually got a job in the Senators front office in the PR department, and it was almost weirdly overnight that I just dropped that fandom. And part of it was, you get to know the players in Ottawa. And I say this for anybody. If you got to know the players on a human level, pick Evan, if you somehow, I'm trying to think of who would be a likable Leafs player, like Wayne Simmons, for example. If you somehow saw Wayne Simmons and you spent some time with him, after he walked away, you'd be like, oh man, like I kind of want to see that guy win because he's a good guy. And that's what happens when you come into this industry. people always say like, oh, was it a big challenge to lose your Habs fandom? It wasn't, because I got to know the Alfredsons and the, Zdeno Charas and all these guys. Like I said, they just, Jason Spezza, all these guys, they treated me so well. I was like, man, I want to see these guys win. So that part was easy. What was really difficult early on for me though was like holding a microphone when I switch over to Sportsnet, and like, you're interviewing the guys that you grew up watching. And what's funny is they sent me to Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh wins the draft lottery. That was what, summer of 2005, right? The lockout had ended. They win the lottery. Looks like they're getting Sidney Crosby. Sportsnet sends me. I was in New York for the draft lottery. They send me to Pittsburgh. They fly me there to do a story on Pittsburgh getting Crosby. Okay. And I was like, wow, this is great. And they're like, just go there, get a feel for the city, go see if they're making Crosby jerseys anywhere, and send a note to the Penguins PR department, see if you can get Mario Lemieux. I'm like, okay. So we sent a note. Sure enough, Mario Lemieux agreed to do an interview with me at this was the old, whatever it was, Mellon Arena or the Igloo or whatever. Okay. So I do the interview with him, and I'm telling you, you had to pinch me. I was like a 10-year-old when he scored that goal in the Canada Cup. Like this was unbelievable to me. He was the great, like I was a little bit too young to see Gretzky in his prime. I never saw Gretzky, like the 200-point Gretzky. I was like 5 or 6 years old. The 199-point Lemieux guy, I saw that guy. Like that was the greatest player I've ever seen in my life. So I get to interview him, and I'm like, I was pinching myself, okay? And I'm thinking, I can't believe I'm interviewing Mario Lemieux. I get through the interview. It's all good. Whatever, he goes to separate ways. A few days later, I fly back to Ottawa, and I'm interviewing John Muckler for something. John was the old GM in Ottawa. Mm-hmm. And before we start the interview, Muckler says to me, I saw your interview with Mario. He said, my God, it looked like you were staring up at God. You were so in awe. And I was like, damn, I didn't think that came through on the TV. So that was the biggest issue for me, was like, the opportunities to the Mario Lemieux and the Gretzky's and these guys that like Joe Sakic and like these guys that, you would watch in your childhood, and you're like, I can't believe like that. That's the one thing I always wish every aspiring reporter had a chance to experience, that kind of pinch me moment, is I can't believe I'm doing this. And I try really hard to remember that. Like, I think a lot of reporters you get bogged down and jaded and cynical and all that stuff in the job. Man, like, I try and tell myself, like, how many people in Ottawa would love to be standing here next to Tim Stützle right now, or next to Brady Tkachuk? It's like, we're really fortunate. And, so probably the biggest change for me is I don't get intimidated. Like, part of it is now I'm like twice the age of, Brady Tkachuk in my 40s, right? And Tim Stützle, and that's part of it. But I want to make sure I keep the excitement and the awe is probably not the right word, or wonderment, but like I got a really cool job, and I think if you forget that, that's when you can sometimes leave that passion behind. And I always want to remember that it's really cool to interview NHL players, even though I'm not intimidated by them anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think like so interesting. Like as a kid, you kind of idolize these players that can do no wrong, and then as you get older, you almost become more critical of them, and you're like, oh yeah, the Sens is great, but like I'm not like looking up to Brady Tkachuk because I'm also like 2 months older than him, which is mind-boggling in my head now. We wanted to thank you for coming on the podcast. You've been very generous with your time and letting us ask you whatever we wanted. And I just wanted to end off with one thing. And I feel like this isn't something you may often be asked, but what does Ian Mendes want for Christmas this year?
Oh, wow. Wow. This one's coming out left. This is a good question, because now we're pretty much a month away. Boy, oh boy. It's a good question. I don't have anything on my list, and I don't want to give you like one of those awful answers like I just want world peace, or like, because that's nobody wants that. You want to hear that. You know what? I do know what I want. But during the pandemic, and I'm not a huge video game guy, but inexplicably our Xbox died during the pandemic. And I haven't, our kids are a bit older now, but every once in a while I go by the TV and I'm like, why don't we just get the Xbox fixed or get a new Xbox? Yes, you know what? There we go. I want my Xbox. I want a new Xbox like I'm a kid again. Xbox under the tree. That's what I'm going for. You know what? You planted that seed in my mind. This is actually I need to send my wife this podcast because Black Friday is coming up this week. Some killer deals. Maybe just put the vibes out there that
we'll clip it up and post it on Twitter, and then you can just
there we go. Just tag my wife in it. Yeah. Little Ian just wants his Xbox for Christmas.
Grab a PS5 instead and join us online.
PS5, yeah. No, you know what's funny? I got a PS2. I think it was 2002 they came out like with the PS2. My wife actually got me a PS2 early. They were really hard to get, and I got one before Martin Havlat. And Marty Havlat was a huge gamer. And I don't know how my wife did. She got a PS2 before Marty Havlat could get his PS2. And I was like, this is unbelievable. Wait till I tell. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot again, Ian. Really appreciate this, taking your time out for us. Wish you all the best for the upcoming season with the Sens and everything. And yeah.
Yeah, listen, Sufyan, Omar, Evan, thank you so much for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun, and I'd love to, you know what, down the road, hit me up again, and we'll do it for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Thank you so much to Ian Mendes for talking to us, about the Sens, about his career, and we really, really, really do appreciate him giving us some time. And so. Now we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the NHL. We'll talk about some hot players, not attractiveness. Well, maybe. But so first person I wanted to bring up personally was Jason Robertson.
God.
This I totally understand why Sufjan has the biggest man crush on this guy. Like he is lighting it up. Missing training camp doesn't matter. He
ranked 6 in fantasy hockey. He's amazing.
He just is on an absolute tear. Pretty sure he had like a 5 or 6 game goal streak. He had 10 points in 5 games.
He was like a 12 point streak now too.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
He's almost as good as his brother.
Is there a brother we don't know about? Because it's not Nick.
Nick the healthy scratch.
Yeah, Dallas has been
a steal of a contract.
Yeah, man.
Well,
what was it? What's his contract again?
4 times 7.
Yeah.
The thing is, you're looking at. Yeah, he definitely could have got more comparing to other contracts, but Stützle getting 8-3 in Ottawa, he's also taxed heavily, whereas you're getting no state tax. You're getting a full $7 million as opposed to other places, and that's probably how they got him at that number.
That is fair. Yeah. It's just he's playing like right now. So
yeah.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like he obviously just did it because now 4 years from now he can sign like a $14 million contract if he wants to. Whereas now if he wanted to max out, it'd probably be around like 9. So it will pay dividends for him eventually if he keeps putting up years like he's having right now. And he's just insane. Dallas, thing is, we said Seguin and Ben were huge factors for them improving, whatever, and they both have like 16 or 17 points already.
Mm-hmm.
Like, aren't just being secondary scorers anymore. So if they can get...
That's why...
If they can turn into like a 65, 70 point season for both of those guys, that'd be insane.
That's why before the season, we just didn't... The issue with Dallas that we had was like we just didn't know what the performance was going to be like, because when you look at Dallas, you look at them on paper and you're like, this is a team that should do well, and they've got the talent, both on offense and defense actually,
and goaltending.
Yeah. It's so you look at them on paper and you're like, this is a team that should do well. Then, but yet again, in our division rankings, where did we even have them? Like,
I think I had them in either top 3 or in the first wild card.
I don't remember where I
had them exactly where they are.
I don't even know where they are.
Neither do I.
But yeah, like when their players are firing, that's a good team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That first line has been firing for like 2 years now.
Yeah, it's a great first line.
Yeah. The thing is, Jamie Benn will have to go next year, or Seguin, one of the two, because then they have to sign Rope Hintz, who's going to want like 8. So.
Yes. Some teams that aren't doing so well, Vancouver.
Still.
Like they're a bit better. They've won some games.
They have the worst forward in the NHL right now. So.
They're on a worse pace than last season.
But Bo Horvat's playing himself out of Vancouver. 14 goals.
Yeah.
Bro, even like that's the thing. The only player not playing himself out of Vancouver right now is Brock Besser. Even like Miller's doing okay, even though he just signed a contract to stay there.
Miller is
He's picked it up since the start of the season.
he's terrible defensively.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone see that Kirby Doc goal? Where he just stood still?
Which, hey,
The guy is terrible defensively.
Yeah, he's had I think he's losing his will to play there, which kind of sucks because he just signed a contract there for 8 years.
Oh boy.
Pedersen though, he's been good too. Like he's actually analytically having a better season than he's ever had. But
It's not a surprise to see offensive guys do well under Boudreaux.
yeah, except Brock Besser. Brock Besser has the worst expected goals for and expected goals against in the league.
Yeah, it's
The only player worse than him, just in general, is Rasmus Ristolainen.
Just the line
oh, your favorite guy.
He's just a block.
Yeah.
Block Besser.
Block best.
Brock Besser is Ristolainen, but he doesn't hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
And I mean the New Jersey Devils guys.
oh.
They're about to hit 12 against Ottawa. That's
No,
not
no.
That's a
They
no-brainer
lost
win.
in overtime to them. That's pretty freaking good from Ottawa.
He sure has looked amazing too.
Yeah, he's
Like,
great. Yeah.
Bratz looked good, amazing. Hughes looked amazing.
Vanacek as well, by the way.
Danchek has picked it
Yeah.
up. Their defense is really good. There's literally nothing bad happening on that team. It's I don't know. I don't even know what to say. Like, and like I think the scary thing for everyone else is that how young they are, and they're playing as well as they are right now.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, they still have Dougie Hamilton, who's experienced.
Yeah. This is
It's a scary team for
a
you.
great team.
It's weird, like, looking at the standings right now. I mean, I'm sure this happens, like, most years. Like, there's always teams that you don't expect. But there's a lot of, like, all over the place happening right now. Like, Seattle's doing really well. Detroit's doing pretty well.
Right's not.
Yeah, true. Calgary's not doing very well. I thought
Mm.
he was going to truck. And I think I said this to Sophie yesterday.
Sucked.
I think that the Calgary Flames remind me of the LA Kings when they got in at the 8th seed and they just trucked. They just went through everyone. I could see them getting a
Way more
low seed
talented, though.
and then just doing really well in the playoffs.
Seems way more talented. That's the issue. So I don't know. Markstrom needs to be better. That's pretty much the main thing that needs to change. Everything else. will
Well,
find
their
its way.
goaltending was ridiculous last year.
Also, Florida's
Yeah.
not been that bad. They're up
Florida
there
is just
in the third
finding
div.
random defensemen and turning them to gods. That Mahura guy or whatever. It was like we played Florida recently, and it was weird because like the first like 2 periods they just absolutely dominated. In the last one we had like 26 shots, but Bob stood on his head and we still lost. Regardless, Forsling and Mahura are sick defensemen, and Gudas is looking good. Gudas. And like he's turned into like an analytical darling in Florida now. Spencer Knight is like 2 years younger than me and Evan, and he's amazing.
He's like 29 years younger than Omar.
Oh my god.
And he's like he turned a $10 million goalie into a backup goalie, which is insane. But yeah, I don't know. I hate Florida still, but because they are beating my team. But Carter Verhaeghe's good.
Yeah, 11 goals. Something like that.
He had 12
Traded
points.
for him in fantasy.
He had 12 points in 6 games against the Caps last year in the playoffs and scored the overtime win.
Yeah.
I can't stand him. And Barkov is just insane. So yeah.
Yeah, like other players doing well. Eric Carlson. Crazy.
I just thought
Continuing to do well.
Montreal's only line
Yeah.
is very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Suzuki, Caulfield, Doc, and everyone. Suzuki's gonna stop scoring. He's at 11 goals now, and he isn't stopping scoring. Caulfield has looked really good. Caulfield is just turning into DeBrincat, but his shot is a little bit spicier.
Because it goes in the net.
And then
It also looks nicer.
Doc has like fit in really well. Honestly, that like they're obviously overperforming right now, and like will probably fall in the standings, but the players that you hope to do well on Montreal, like the younger guys, are performing very well, and I think I don't see that stopping. Brendan Gallagher has had an interesting couple of weeks. I see videos of him like
Fighting people in the blue.
but it's not even fighting. It's just like him running into someone, and then like it just becomes a thing.
Oh, how he dives?
No. I think Stutzel still takes the cake there.
No.
At
least Stutzel gets points.
Yeah, but Gallagher is just there to be annoying, and he's kind of filling that. Now he's just getting paid $6 million to do it. I can't even hate on it. I don't like him that much, but he's like a worse Tim Stutzel.
Speaking of Tim Stutzel, let's do our head-to-head.
Gallagher Stutzel?
Yeah, all right. I'd love to do this one. What do you guys think? If this is not a whitewash,
I pick Tom Wilson.
What is your head-to-head for us today, though?
Yeah, let's go to that.
that is a great question. So, I was thinking, we've done decent amount of defensemen, decent amount of forwards. We even did fourth line forwards, which is great.
Oh, we're doing goalies, aren't we?
We're doing a coach head. No, I'm just kidding. Imagine.
That would work. Based off record.
I don't know.
I don't know how you would argue either. Well,
DJ
actually, that'd be interesting. I'd like to do a coach.
For this specific team.
Doing a coach head-to-head would be fun, actually.
It'd be for like a specific team, though.
No, just career-wise.
Okay, I guess.
All right. So I feel like we may have done this exact one, or very similar to it, but I want to ask it now and see what you guys think. UC Saros or Jacob Markstrom? So both of them in the past couple seasons have been lights out. Like what Markstrom and the Flames in general had 10% of the league's shutouts. UC Saros had one of the most, well, I guess if you don't count like Shesterkin and stuff, like one of the most dominant goalie seasons, especially for a small guy. But this season, both of them aren't stopping the puck as much as they used to. So my question for you guys would be, head-to-head right now, to finish the season, which goalie would you prefer? I know we usually like pick new players, but this one I thought would be interesting because you picked two people that have been dominant, but now it just changed so quickly.
I mean, this is easy for me because Saros is already playing better. Like he's had like 5 or 6 good starts in a row.
Yeah, I'm also going Saros for this one.
Markstrom is still sucking, and he doesn't show any signs of being.
But also, but not even just right now. But I'm thinking Saros just because I think you can argue that he's the only reason Nashville was in the playoffs last year.
But he didn't play for the end of the season.
He didn't play what?
He played them to them clinching the playoffs.
Yeah.
He got injured in like the last or second last game. Those 2 games really mattered after
Like you could argue that he was the biggest part of them making the playoffs.
Yeah, and like Markstrom has had consistency issues. Last year was probably his most consistent issues. Yes. Yeah, I need to take a pause again like I did last time. Anyways, it used to just be that Edmonton would light him up.
You're having
Oh,
yourself
it's
a
having a
moment.
rough time. Edmonton would light him up, but now it's like every single team
But
is lighting him up.
I feel like Saros is a more calm presence in net.
Yeah.
Markstrom's a little bit edgy. His positioning isn't always the best. And he kind of flails a lot here and like.
Which sucks when you're 6'6".
Yeah, like I don't know, like even in the playoffs, like he's a good goalie. He's a great goalie, you could probably say. But I think if you're comparing him to Saros, I think Saros just provides a little bit more calmness in the net compared to like Markstrom will make his saves, but sometimes he'll let stuff in and you'll be like, what was he doing?
There's always a lot of shifts in goaltending year to year, just based on, and like there's certain guys that maybe had great seasons, but it was like a little overshadowed by whatever. I think 2 guys that I maybe either had below them or like right next to them have
Demko.
Oh, he's like out of my top 10 now. He's statistically, analytically, everythingly has just been the worst goalie in the league this year, which sucks because I like him a lot. Regardless, the 2 guys are Ottinger and Sorokin.
Oh yeah,
Sorokin is playing like he is this year so far. He's been the best goalie in the league, and I don't know if it's even close right now. Like even Vasilevsky's rocking like a 3+ GA right now. Shesterkin's been good, but he hasn't been as dominant as he was last year. Sorokin is carrying an Islanders team that still can't score. Barzal still doesn't have a goal.
He is on pace for 82 points
With no goals.
with 0 goals.
Wait,
But-
has he played every game so far?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh no,
And
man.
he has what, 18 assists in 17 games or something like that?
But that's the thing, though. Even regardless, like Barzal aside, he's playing good, but it's a lot of secondary assists, no goals. I don't know. Anyways, Sorokin is the reason that Islanders are anywhere right now, and he was like amazing last year too. Ottinger, before he got injured, was playing the exact same as he did in the playoffs last year, and he was just continuing into this year. And like, that's where you see a lot of fluctuation goalie from year to year. I think Saros just has a better chance of staying in the top 10, and I think he's already shown that, like in the last few games. I think that it's a little harder for him because he doesn't have a backup goalie still, and he's on a worse team. So the fact that Markstrom is sucking kind of is a little more alarming. Saros sucking just could be anything like fatigue issues or the team in front of him or whatever. But there's a lot more things you can blame solely on Markstrom versus solely on Saros.
Evan?
I think it's interesting. Like, I think it's closer than you guys are giving it credit for. Like, if you're picking a guy...
I don't think it's that far.
I don't think it's... No, I never said it's
No,
not
it's not
close.
Guys?
Yeah.
Shut up.
Okay.
My turn to talk.
You represented us incorrectly, so we had to
Because we're
step
brown.
in. Speaking up for ourselves, okay?
Whoa,
Our people are allowed to do that.
God.
Yeah, come on, bro. You have a voice.
All right, so thanks for tuning in. I think Markstrom obviously like has more experience in the NHL and the playoffs in general. I think
Not
I
very good
do
ones.
agree that he has been less consistent overall. I think that he's a big goalie and he had a great season last year. I'm not like he could easily like turn it around. Like there's still tons of games left to play. So it is tough because like Saros could have another stinky 3 games and Markstrom could have a great 3 games the next 3. So it is tough to say because I'm like trying to judge it on this season, but also like take into the like last couple of years as well. I mean, he just takes up more of the net too.
Where the last couple of seasons, Saros has been better.
No, I know. So I probably lean Saros, even though I should
Hey,
probably pick
please.
Markstrom.
Is this the first time we're all on the same team?
See, we try to get someone to go the other way, but you guys always just go, no, and then I have to try and back it up. But yeah, I think Saros.
I was thinking Saros
lean,
as soon as
but
you gave the
I
options.
like Markstrom personally.
I like him
Better?
too. Yeah, I relate to him.
Okay.
Large, extremely flexible, and athletic goalies that sometimes get a little erratic.
How many times have you pulled your groin?
Well, no, the last time was when I was 13, and that's when I stopped doing the splits. So we have controlled it since then. Although I'm working on it, I have a program to get myself to do the splits in a year. So we're gonna try to do that. It's hard to recover from a grade 3 growing strain, though. So
Yeah, well, first time we had a full line unanimous
there you go.
vote on one player. So, couple firsts here. Big fish. Everyone picking the same person. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning in yet again. You can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and check us out on Twitter and TikTok as well for any updates and funny videos. So, unfortunate diehards. And thanks again. And say goodbye.
We'll see you next time.